Thank you for clicking because it's really exciting to show you all No Place Like Home. I really hope I make a convincing case for giving it a try because my first jump into the game ended up stretching into a marathon that resulted in little sleep. But that's okay, it was totally worth it. If you're already a fan of games like My Time at Portia and Story of Seasons, then you might like this one too because it follows a similar formula, but it does have some of its own innovative spin that's been refreshing within the genre. No character creation here, just straight into the game as a protagonist at the beginning of a path of a guided tutorial. A slight bit of fumbling around with where to put the chicken coop, and I didn't notice the robot on the horizon immediately. I couldn't figure out where to get a battery for a moment, but it seems fairly easy to pick up so far. The little jog through these different activities covered all of the important basics because I was immediately off and running in the game. Or rather, hoovering, because one of your primary tools is a backpack vac that acts as a looting mechanism to your inventory. The next primary tool is your drill. You can swing it by left click, but you can also hold it to activate the drill mode for easier plowing down of large solid piles. There are a variety of these piles littered across the game landscapes that contain different materials needed for crafting, and all this must be vacuumed up after it's smashed over. What's left over is a nice, clean, and quite beautiful landscape. An imagination of what it might be like if humans abandoned the Earth for Mars and just left it trashed as a frat boy house. We get the task of making everything pretty again. Along the path it introduces a recycler. This is where resources like trash and rubble go to be processed into general crafting items called recycled material. This will be useful later on. It's worth reloading recyclers as often as possible. Included is farming within this tutorial. There's pre-made plots already, so just toss down the given seeds to get through the planting part. Watering uses your hose tool, activated by holding down the right-click button and then just run around spraying the areas needed. To fill up the water tank, you'll need to find a water source and hold the spacebar as you would pick up for trash. Different plants have different rates of growth, but eventually you'll come across some fully grown potatoes. Using the E key while aiming over the plant will directly put it in your inventory. You'll need these potatoes for the next station, which is cooking. Oven upgrades will allow for larger combination of items that unlock important recipes needed throughout the game. As in this world, there are no typical currencies other than the trading preserved foods or other commodities. For those preserved foods to trade, that requires the preserver machine, where you can dump a variety of harvested materials to create meals. The next one you'll find yourself at quite often, the workbench. The one at your home will have a larger selection, but for the purpose of the tutorial, we make a chicken coop so then we can learn how to tame a chicken of our own. Using potatoes to approach a chicken for feeding, it will eventually make its way back to the coop, even if you kind of put it far away like I did. For future reference, holding the R key will dislodge items and stations from their place. The soil can be hoovered back up into your vac for replacement in new areas. This will help you get your farm organized in a way that you'd like it. It didn't take me long to make a small factory of recyclers to handle the loads of trash that one will have to pick up just in order to make some space around the farm. Upon entry, it's just, well, a mess. Nearly every inch of ground is covered in something to loot in this game, and it gives players a ton to do when getting started. Trash in every direction in sight, and that could be filled with just regular old trash, rubble, wood scraps, electronics, rubber, toxic waste, and seeds. Unlike a good amount of farming simulator games, you don't exactly start out in a serene and pristine world rich with natural resources. Quite the opposite. It's Earth in a time when humans had already had their way and left it like careless humans leave their hotel suite. Trashed! In this way, the formula starts to deviate as you're trying to save trees and replant them opposed to mowing them down. It's a thoughtful message about taking care of the earth that we could use a little of right now, because underneath it all, the zones are bright and colorful and your farm starts to look quite like a woodsy paradise, with treehouse included. To start off, you just have the one small room that's looking pretty sad, but it seems that we'll eventually be able to fix up the walls with the help of a neighbor, and there's a quest about some broken key pieces that we've hidden from ourselves, meaning there's more treehouse in here somewhere. I wonder how big it is when it's fully expanded, because from the outside it looks pretty tiny, but so far it's unlocked the hallway with yet more locked doors. If players click through their work table, they'll get to the section that has yet more workstations. Included are a few for decorations and furniture. Looking forward to unlocking some more of the game to see what kind of customizing can be done. So far, the yard decoration station has some cute additions for outdoor areas like the benches, a tire swing, and lamps. The first and most obvious exploration is through the double wooden doors to the storefront. This particular area seems to be a gateway for additional zones because once you start clearing through the large open field, you'll see more doors on the horizon. Although some of them could just lead to other zones too. I've not yet entirely figured out the fast travel system of the game. It seems to be a combination of doors, ladders, tunnels, and manhole covers, but while some are direct ports headed to the spots near your farm, others are elaborate underground tunnels full of robot hazards and trash. Once you've cleared the barrier of rubbish next to the pre-placed farm plot, the second farm area will be accessible. Keep pushing through the piles over the bridge until you find the NPC Rudy. He's got the access to the much-needed upgrades for your drill to knock down other types of materials that might be in your way, in addition to having most of the character upgrades available in the game to help you progress through each areas of different rubbish. In addition to the animals you can lure back to the farm with food, there are also wild animals out there who will require refurbishing of their habitats. In the first area adjacent to the store, it's foxes. You might notice the pigs are now added. Once clearing through this area and solving some puzzles to get across the creek, you'll be able to obtain the pigsty for the farm. Piggies will give you a daily yield of truffles with care actions, and you'll be able to purchase a recipe to make additional copies for more pigs. A similar pattern follows with the other animals that have interactions throughout the game, except for the few scattered finds like the cat, dog, and raccoon. These come with a mini house of their own and provide gifts. When you spot them in the wild, start up a chat, and it will put them in their inventory for placement later back at home. After buying upgrades from any of the NPCs, don't forget to visit the workbench back at home to install the upgrade or apply the piece of equipment. This is something I'm frequently forgetting between dashing off for quests. The storyline is sparse quests, but keep in mind that the game is still pretty early in alpha stage. However, still worth looking into as it has a roadmap with goals that will unfold into quite a lot more gameplay, more crops, more animals, and just more of everything, really. Most of it comes from primary vendor NPCs with all your upgrades, but so far there's been some scattered pigs around in need of assistance. The first one is mostly about unlocking all the important extra buildings or functions around the farm, and I still haven't found that pesky third robot. We're into the Lonely Hills zone and comes quite a bit more to do, especially to start rounding up deer into a suitable habitat. Appropriate for a game about trying to save what's left of the planet. Currently there seems to be 3 game biomes in the early access process. It consists of the starter area hub with your farm and the shopkeeper, the toxified forest of Lonely Hills, and the wintry tundra of Frozen Peaks. A recent update allows for fast travel to these zones once unlocked from a tunnel right at your farmstead. You can already see by the layout in the tunnel that we're destined to explore a few more zones than the ones currently available. Frozen Peaks comes up as the 3rd major zone and introduces 2 more NPCs into the game in addition to 3 new crops and a new animal for the farm. As you travel around these zones, there are tunnels, manhole covers, and the other accesses to the below ground level that seems to interconnect most of the zones, or at least from what I can tell so far. I may start out entering near a storefront and end up on the other side of Lonely Hills while exploring the underground tunnels, or garage, or warehouse, or I'm not exactly sure what we're supposed to refer to that as, but it's a whole lot of extra activities. It's where players will find the majority of puzzles to solve in-game, utilizing boxes to hold buttons, figuring out sequences to open doors, or avoiding projectile traps. There's a lot of game that's not immediately apparent because it's underneath you. A quick browse over the updates about the future of the game shows that at least one more major update is coming with a large expansion to the current gameplay that would nearly double the map. The Q2 release was cut back to rework one of the zones. This means that there's a ton to still be excited about. Even if you haul through the beginning of this game by playing multi-hour long chunks like I did. The beginnings were just so engaging and it felt like there was so much to do that I kept right on going until it was way past my bedtime. I do like the theme of this game and what it's drawing attention to. It's actually been quite an industry trend lately, but I'm not suggesting that this developer is necessarily just jumping on a popularity train. If anything, this seems like it's more authentic and wholesome, a purposeful work and not a corporate responsibility stunt. Even the title, No Place Like Home, reminds us that this is home and to take care of where we live. Gamers can definitely help out by being mindful of their carbon footprint, especially from gaming itself. Sometimes we forget how much everything has a cost, but gaming can account for billions of kilowatt hours per year globally. Old gaming consoles alone make up 9% of the world's global e-waste. And while we've started downloading or streaming to alleviate the need for as much plastic packaging, the Lancaster University in North England estimates that our carbon emissions could increase by 30% if gamers are streaming everything by 2030, and that's not considering what it would be like utilizing 4K gaming. It's tricky and frustrating, finding solutions for some of these environmental problems that just spawn another one. I live in California, and we're guilty of consuming more electricity annually than small countries like Sri Lanka. It only shows how much cultures and their infrastructure make a difference in their place on the worldwide table. We have millions of people in California, but with such conditions is exactly why the tall order to fill that stresses grids in extreme heat. Smaller countries with less access to energy sources are tough to compare. The lack of access is its own problem situation in 2021. These arguments should not distract from using the example as a scale of the problem. It's not that gaming is bad because it uses energy to do, it's just being mindful of the way energy is expended and how it adds up over time. Some things we tend to think of as better for the environment, like getting some physical exercise in. But if one has to drive to the gym to do that, then the expenditure of travel may negate the forfeited game time. From our beef consumption to our MMO habit, we can pick and choose where we cut back. Consider this minor adjustment. PCs use electricity in the course of playing a game, but what about playing online? How much does that make a difference? You can often be cutting your energy consumption when you're playing an offline game that doesn't require the demand of your network service provider. And even if you took a Tesla Model 3 to the gym, it may still not have made the difference. Might as well game. It's a little complicated. It doesn't make driving a car or playing games a bad thing, just something else to consider about how they factor into climate change issues across the world. On the way out, a short game analogy about climate change in the form of Tetris that might get one thinking about the cycle and what it's starting to stack up like. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.
To understand climate change, think of the game Tetris. For eons, Earth has played a version of this game with blocks of carbon. They enter the atmosphere as carbon dioxide gas from volcanoes, decaying plant matter, breathing creatures, and the surface of the sea. And they leave the atmosphere when they're used by plants during photosynthesis, absorbed back into the ocean, or stored in soil and sediment. This game of Tetris is called the carbon cycle, and it's the engine of life on Earth. What's the connection to climate? Well, when that carbon dioxide is in the air waiting to be reabsorbed, it traps a portion of the sun's heat which would otherwise escape to space. That's why carbon dioxide is called a greenhouse gas. It creates a blanket of warmth known as the greenhouse effect that keeps our Earth from freezing like Mars. The more carbon dioxide blocks hang out in the atmosphere waiting to be cleared, the warmer Earth becomes. Though the amount of carbon in the atmosphere has varied through ice ages and asteroid impacts, over the past 8,000 years, the stable climate we know took shape, allowing human civilization to thrive. But about 200 years ago, we began digging up that old carbon that had been stored in the soil. These fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas, are made from the buried remains of plants and animals that died long before humans evolved. The energy stored inside them was able to power our factories, cars, and power plants. But burning these fuels also injected new carbon blocks into Earth's Tetris game. At the same time, we cleared forests for agriculture, reducing the Earth's ability to remove the blocks. And since 1750, the amount of carbon in the atmosphere has increased by 40% and shows no sign of slowing. Just like in Tetris, the more blocks pile up, the harder it becomes to restore stability. The extra carbon dioxide in the atmosphere accelerates the greenhouse effect by trapping more heat near the surface and causing polar ice caps to melt. And the more they melt, the less sunlight they're able to reflect, making the oceans warm even faster. Sea levels rise, coastal populations are threatened with flooding, natural ecosystems are disrupted, and the weather becomes more extreme over time. Climate change may affect different people and places in different ways, but ultimately it's a game that we're all stuck playing. And unlike in Tetris, we won't get a chance to start over and try again.